Hello, hello. As you probably already know by now, if you've made it to this point in the series, my name is Tyler F.M, and I am the author of Glorybound, Tyranny of Stone, the first book of a fantasy series. You can currently pick up your copy at backerkit.com. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 3, and this is likely going to be the last chapter that I read here on YouTube, at least for quite some time. Maybe one day I'll have a full audio book up here, but for now, just me sitting here with the camera reading my book to you. So, without further ado, Chapter 3, A World Uncovered. The monks began to congregate at the long tables that filled the hall, prepared for their communal feast. In addition to the generous bounty of food prepared, the monks were more than happy to share in their nightly tradition with 3 guests. The 3 of them sat shoulder to shoulder, continuing their conversation as they waited with grumbling stomachs. "I am a long way from home, yes. The heart of Astelonia is beautiful, but it cannot compare to the view here," Menthel admitted. "My studies brought me here, naturally." "So you're a monk too, then?" Callan asked. "Not exactly," Menthel said hesitantly. He seemed reluctant to divulge more, but perhaps sensing the genuine curiosity in the young travelers, he continued. "You see, I'm actually a student of the arcane." The youth stared at him for a moment as they processed the information. "Arcane? You mean like magic? Like in children's stories?" Priam asked smugly. "Tell me more," Callan demanded, his seriousness banishing Priam's skepticism from the air. "I knew I sensed something different about you," Menthel said, his lips curling into a small smile. "You can feel it, can you not? The sickness of the world?" Callan nodded, now smiling ear to ear, feeling for the first time in his life that he met somebody who understood how he felt, despite the exchanging of so few words. "In that case, I will tell you. I am a wizard, or at least as close as you will find in today's world." "An actual wizard," Callan said in awe. "Show us. Cast a spell." "Don't be stupid, Callan. You know he ain't going to be casting any spells," Priam mocked. Feeling the pressure to prove himself, Menthel reached into his bag and pulled out a scroll, unrolling it across the table. Inside were strange inscriptions arranged in a circle. "You see, much of magic is summoned from within. It cannot be so easily demonstrated, especially in these times. As I already explained, my magic is but a grain of sand in a vast desert compared to what the wizards of Eld could do." "Enough excuses. Just show us," Priam demanded. Sighing, Menthel stretched out his hand over the scroll. Closing his eyes, he whispered something under his breath. For a moment, there was nothing. But then the air between his palm and the parchment began to spark. Callan and Priam watched with intensity as a marble of flame manifested in the air, shakily maintaining its form for several seconds before fizzling out with a small pop. From this act alone, Menthel now seemed tired, and the inscribed parchment had a hole burned through the center. The table below was untouched. Both in awe, Callan and Priam looked at one another in stupefied silence. "I don't believe it. An actual wizard," Priam said, still struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. "I knew it!" "I knew it!" Callan shouted, much to the dismay of the monks sitting nearby, one of whom placed a finger over his lips with a furrowed brow. "Sorry." "So now you know that magic goes beyond fairy tales and old myths," Menthel boasted. "But that poses a much more serious question. In the few surviving stories before the Fourth Age, wizardry is described as being a relatively common practice. Yet we find ourselves in a world where people will call you a fool for making such claims. The wizard shifted his gaze from side to side, tracking the expressions of his new companions. Maybe they used it all up, Priam answered. Definitely not, Menthel retorted. The energy sustaining the arcane arts is the very lifeblood of this world. It exists in abundance, a theoretically infinite supply. Something is causing a blockage, Callan concluded, scratching his chin. Precisely, Menthel said as he re-rolled his spent scroll. The flow of energy, or mana as it was once commonly called, has been stifled to an almost catastrophic level. Through rigorous training, I have become accustomed to measuring the levels of mana flowing around me, and I find it to be inconsistent with the old texts. The levels of ambient mana running through this reality are the smallest fraction of what is supposed to be. In that case, Callan paused, his head beginning to spin at the realization. Whatever is stopping the flow has completely altered history. The world has been robbed of its essence, like stealing the breath out of someone's lungs. And it's been this way for hundreds of years, if not longer. It was nearly too much to bear, with Callan still struggling with the life-changing moments of the last week. How his entire reality could be upended again so soon was beyond him. Several monks appeared with trays of food prepared for the hungry congregation. Roasted pheasant, colorful salads, and freshly baked bread filled the air with a heavenly aroma. It became clear that the monks here ate quite well. Where they sourced such feasts was unclear, but there were heavier topics in the minds of their guests. Before digging into the bounty in front of them, the monks bowed their heads in prayer, speaking in unison. Lasmir, who raiseth crop from seed and cow from calf, spare me now from famine's wrath. Eritan, who fashioned me, when death creeping comes, I shall remember thee. Ugamat, silent father, bless me now, shall I not falter. Adam, who stands alone, sitting atop universal throne, heavenly hosts, hierarchy high, I plead you hear this child's cry. At once their heads were raised, and many eager hands reached for fork and knife, alongside generous helpings of the prepared food. Priam scoffed at the sight. Being a monk sure seems a dull life, but at least you'll never starve. Still mulling over the contents of the prayer, Callan began to fill his own plate. Looking over his shoulder, he witnessed Menthel already digging into his own generous helping. Callan's troubled mind came back to the moment for the opportunity to tease his new friend. I thought wizards were supposed to be skinny old men, not gluttons, he said in jest. Swallowing his bit of bread and wiping the corner of his mouth, the blond man defended himself. A strong mind requires lots of fuel. Besides, you have no idea how much energy goes into manifesting fire from thin air, the wizard countered. After dinner, the monks began to clean up after themselves, with a large pot of hot water slid down each of the tables. As the pot reached each of them, they washed their own dish, placing it back upon the table. Once this ordeal concluded, the same older man who greeted Callan and Priam earlier in the day approached them once more, gesturing to the far side of the dining hall. "If you would allow me to show you to your room," he said with a satiated grin. The younger pair parted from the would-be wizard for the night, following the monk. Traveling down a series of spiraling stairs into the cold stone of the mountain brought a strange sense of security mixed with claustrophobia. Torches painted eerie shadows across tight corridors, and the journey concluded at the end of a long hallway, barely as wide as a man's shoulders. They weren't alone, as many of the monks found their way here after dinner, turning left and right through the many doors littering the tunnel. The old monk guided the youths to one of such doors, identical to all the rest, before motioning them inside. The interior was nearly identical to the monk's office, except that instead of a desk, there were 2 small beds in its place. "Menthel is staying in the room next door, should you need to converse with him," the monk said. Is there anything else I can do for you? Your name, Callan said plainly. You never told us. Azidad, spoke the elder. Not the name given to me at birth, but the one revealed to me by the divines. Thank you, Azidad, for everything, Callan said with a genuine smile. It's been a hell of a trip since I left home. I was starved for hospitality. Unable to stop himself, Callan leaned in and hugged the monk. The adventurers turned in for the night, enjoying the lost luxury of padded straw beds and feathered pillows. Callan could have fallen asleep in an instant, but barely a second passed before the silence was broken. Callan, Priam spoke out. Callan grunted in acknowledgement. It kind of makes you miss the stars, doesn't it? Lying here all cooped up like this. I feel like I'm in prison, Priam whined. You're free to go sleep outside. Menthel will thaw you out in the morning, Callan retorted through half-consciousness. Whether or not Priam complained any further, Callan was unsure, because he had drifted off into slumber. He knew the nightmares were not banished forever, but for the first time in over a week, Callan was able to sleep peacefully. Callan awoke still tired. Though he slept through the night, it was not enough to fully restore his vigor from what he had lost, but it was a good start. He saw that Priam was no longer beside him, and having no access to the sky, he was stricken by the odd sensation of having no bearing on the time. Still, his instincts told him it was time to rise, and so he slipped back into his tunic and boots, leaving his sword and chainmail behind. Shambling down the cool stone corridor, the discombobulated warrior made his way up the winding stairs towards fresh air. The stained windows in the above-ground portions of the monastery indicated it was, in fact, day. The final mystery was just how late he had slept in. The empty dining hall indicated the end of breakfast, though hope was not lost, as the hospitable monks set aside a plate for him. Breakfast was much lighter than dinner, a plate adorned with berries and citrus fruits, as well as one or two items he couldn't recognize. Having spent his life in a port city, Callan was familiar with many foreign ingredients, but these were still alien to him. Small fruits, the size of an olive, yet bright white and translucent. Placing one into his mouth, Callan was shocked at how delicate they were. The fruit popped at the slightest grazing of his teeth, and an outpouring of sweetness nearly overwhelmed him. It seemed to liquefy against his tongue, leaving only loose skin draped around the pit at the center. He sat in silence, taken in by this new experience, but his focus was broken as someone sat behind him. Menthel. Picking up a second one of these strange fruits, Callan presented it to the wizard. Perhaps the expression on his face gave it away, as Menthel laughed and answered Callan's question before it could be asked. Mana fruit, Menthel explained. At least, that's what the monks call them. As far as I know, this is the only place in all of Centrum where they are grown. The monks cultivate them in a cave nearby. I'm not sure if it's true, but one of them told me that these were the first food in all of creation, that they're so old they never lost their connection to divinity. It's a nice story to be sure, and regardless of the truth of it, they offer a nice energy boost. Just as Menthel finished his words, Callan felt his mouth begin to tingle. The sensation quickly spread to his limbs, particularly in his hands and feet, as if stiff pine needles were being rolled across the surface of his skin. Perhaps he was only imagining things, but his mind felt sharper as well. Keep the seeds, Menthel continued. The monks grind them into powder and steep them in water. It is similar to that coffee drink. Do you know of it? The one the elves drink? I've heard of it, Callan replied, still preoccupied by the sensation in his limbs. Callan finished his breakfast, saving the final mana fruit for the end. The two of them spoke more, and Callan learned how Menthel came to his unorthodox lifestyle. His parents were farmers, nothing too extraordinary, but what Menthel said next really caught Callan's attention. "But when I was around your age, I had this strange encounter." Menthel's voice became hushed, as if fearful that someone in the empty room would hear him. "I saw this man on the edge of the forest, but he wasn't really a man. It was a spirit, a ghost. I saw him, but I saw through him. Any time I drew close, he would fade away, returning elsewhere." "Not too different from myself, if you'd believe it," Callan replied, impressed by Menthel's testimony. "Really," Menthel contested, "a conspiracy of ghosts luring young men away from their homes to go on an adventure." Callan laughed at Menthel's hypothesis. "No, I mean, I encountered a man who seemed like something else. I don't know how to describe it, but not a ghost. He definitely was flesh and blood." Hesitating for a moment, Callan decided to be open with Menthel in exchange for his own honesty. "It was a man who seemed larger than life itself. When I saw him, I thought that maybe the heroes in the old myths really did exist." "I know exactly what you mean," Menthel reassured. He stood, leaving Callan to his meal, but as he parted, he turned to ask one last question. "Where will you be headed next?" "Unfortunately, I have no idea," Callan admitted. "I will be staying here 2 more days. Then I will be going back west to Astelonia," Menthel explained. "I have business in the capital. You should talk things over with Priam about joining me. I have a good feeling about you two." "Where is Priam, anyway?" Callan asked. "Last I saw, he was huddled under a blanket on a big rock outside. Something about being unable to sleep in a prison cell." Menthel chuckled, recalling the sight of the shivering boy. "How stupid," Callan groaned, rubbing his temples. "Anyways, think it over. A few extra sores are never a bad thing, and what awaits us there will interest us all," Menthel said before departing. And that'll do it. If you'd like to know where the story goes from here, again, you can pick up your copy in the description below. If you're watching this within a week or two of its release, it'll be on backerkit.com, as I said earlier. You can get exclusive editions like a hardcover. We're pretty close. Right now, we are less than 90 euros away from our first stretch goal, which will start including interior artwork for the hardcover editions. So it's very, very exciting. Go ahead and pick yourself up one of those, and I'll see you around. I hope you enjoy.